tonight. This is a joint meeting of the City of Little Falls Economic Development Authority and the county's Rural Development Finance Authority. On the agenda, we have two items, but they're really actually a combined item for a development agreement with Wabash National. On the line, we do have Dustin Smith. He's Vice President with Wabash, and he can certainly go into a further explanation of what they're looking at. But just a brief synopsis before I pass it on to Dustin. In 2017, there was a transfer and purchase of the Larson Boats facility by Wabash. The city and RDFA came together in a partnership to help with a subsidy agreement in the form of a MIF loan from the state. I think there was job creation fund and as well as job training dollars from the state. And the city and county did partner again to do what we refer to as a tax rebate business subsidy. So that tax rebate subsidy is $50,000 from the city, EDA, and $40,000 from the county's RDFA. And we agreed to rebate Wabash after they paid their taxes, that amount, those individual amounts for the next 10 years. They are currently looking at a major expansion to that facility and are looking for a similar extension or an extension to that agreement in the same dollar amounts, looking to add 10 more years onto the total, so a total of 20 years, and I believe it's about 15 years remaining on that. So it is really exciting, and I don't want to steal Dustin's thunder about what he has to present and talk about. So I will give him the opportunity to kind of bring you up to speed on what they're doing at the plant here and the growth that they're experiencing. Dustin, are you available? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Can you allow me to share my screen?
I think we can. We'll figure that out.
He's working on it.
Okay, great. There we go.
There we go, we got it.
Did okay? Great.
Yeah.
So again, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for giving me the time this evening. My name is Dustin Smith. If I haven't had a chance to meet you, I look forward to that. I've spent a lot of time in your great community, and I call in now from Phoenix, where it's 105 degrees. So I greatly wish I could be with you in person versus here. But I will be up there next week for a series of meetings. But as outlined, I do have an exciting update to share with everybody. Some of you have heard the story before, and if so, that's great. And those of you that haven't been caught up to speed on where Wabash is, I'd like to take you through that right now. So if we looked at the company itself, Wabash was founded in 1985 and been a public company since '91. Last year, in 2021, we did a combined revenue of about $1.8 billion, and that was really on the heels of shipping just over 45,000 semi-trailers. In addition to that, we shipped over 20,000 truck bodies and other smaller pieces of commercial transportation equipment. There were 6,000 employees worldwide. We're headquartered in Lafayette, Indiana, and we have 14 manufacturing locations in the U.S. and Mexico. 13 of them are in the United States, and one of them is in Mexico. And I do want to draw your attention to the right-hand side here. It's subtle, and you'll be seeing it soon, but we've gone through a rebranding process in the company, and we launched a new brand. So you'll start to see a shift from the top right, the red and black and white Wabash National logo, to the blue logo down below. And as part of my visit up to Little Falls next week, and we'll also be doing the rebadging of the equipment. So what that means is all of our equipment rolling off our production lines, we'll start to see the new Wabash logo you see there in blue. I don't have to explain to you, the there often at a national level with various stakeholders we meet with. So clearly, the makeup of the facility, over 50 acres, almost 500,000 square feet across the campus. When we were able to come in and acquire the Little Falls site, I talk about often to this day, 5 years later, how great the partnership was between Wabash and the community. And I really commend Larson though as well. I was kind of lead on the negotiation of that process. From Larson to the community, I couldn't have asked for more cooperation from all parties. And that really led us to be able to come in and pick up as many of the employees as possible, on a Monday. And we've really been building out some fascinating technology ever since then. EcoNext technology, which was formerly, we've been calling it Molded Structural Composites, or MSC. We've rebranded that to EcoNext. This has been a project, and I've probably been to the facility, 25 times in 5 years, and I've been very consistent with all of the employees there that, we are seeking to do something that no one's ever done before. And while that's exciting, it also comes with risk. And what I meant by that is, there wasn't a clear path to success. Great things take a fair amount of risk. And we spent years trying to refine the technology, refine the product design, bluntly figure out how to actually manufacture. And we've spent 5 years now working through that. And this slide is just to show you that we're starting to receive some pretty impressive recognition from various third parties over the last couple of years as the technology begins to take root. And the value proposition, if you will, starts to prove out. The second bullet there talks about an Indiana Manufacturers Association award we received around innovation and sustainability or sustainable solutions in the trucking industry. And last year, we were named one of America's most responsible companies by Newsweek, and the major criteria they used to decide those awards was the company's focus on environmental and social responsibility. And I'll touch on that here in the next slide or two around this technology that we've developed plays very well into the sustainability space, which we can all appreciate is getting more and more attention over these last few years. Perhaps best highlighted is that last bullet, which was another award we received, where we put out the country's first zero-emission refrigerated trailer with our technology. And as you all probably familiar with, and maybe even more so now that we've got a facility right there in town producing the product, the refrigerated trailers obviously have a large refrigeration unit on the front. We call the reefer unit itself. It's a diesel burning engine. That's the air conditioner, if you will, that cools the frame, keeps the temperature controlled. Again, with the push on sustainability and emissions, what we were able to do with this technology is produce a semi-trailer that had an electric refrigeration unit hanging off the front of it, battery packs in the nose of the trailer, and then it was outfitted with solar panels across the entire roof of the trailer. And the only way that solar panels were able to produce enough energy to keep the freight temperature controlled is because the insulative properties of our product is so much more superior than everybody else's. So I often refer to it as the Yeti cooler of coolers, which is, if you have really good cooler technology, it simply takes less energy to keep your freight temperature controlled. And that's what we've developed and are producing right there in the whole. So as we push for electrification, we all appreciate, we all see the headlines about the push to electrification, both in all the passenger type vehicles as well as commercial. Really, the person that can find the most efficient technology will aid in the adoption of electrification. And that's something that, if we were honest, 5 years ago when we set out on this project, the push for electrification was nothing like it is today. So it's been a nice tailwind to the adoption or let's say interest of the technology itself. So what is EcoNext, formerly known as MSC or Molded Structural Composites? These are some pictures from inside the facility. We have a lot of patents, we have a lot of barriers to entry to the technology. But basically, I like to describe the process extrude those on a continuous manufacturing line now in the plant. And that foam is wrapped in fiberglass, and sometimes, in some cases, there's some carbon fiber in there as well. And then what we do with the Prisma is we put them into these molds, which is the second picture. And once we pack these Prisma beams into a mold, we'll put a resin on it, top and bottom, and then we'll vacuum the mold. And after the resin kicks and generates the heat, it starts to cure the resin. We'll pop the cold plate off of that mold, and what you have in that center picture is a 53-foot long, one-piece sidewall of a semi-trailer. And that's completely different than how all other semi-trailers are designed today, including our conventional products. You normally have coiled sheets of aluminum that you're shearing off at 48 inches or so widthwise. You're poking holes in the sidewalls. You're putting rivets through those sidewalls. You have metal studs or Z-posts, as we call them, that give the wall the structure. And then you are attaching a liner to the inside of that wall, and then you're filling the whole cavity with foam. And that's the way the entire industry has built semi-trailers for decades. And the thermal efficiency of that is very poor, actually. At a minimum, you have thousands of aluminum rivets, facing the sun. Those are terrible heat sinks. They transfer the heat right through that insulated wall and starts to, let's say, combat against the insulative properties of your trailer. This is a solid one piece. There's zero metal in the sidewall, and it's all encapsulated in resin. So what you have is, what I'm trying to describe in the second bullet, is you have much higher thermal properties, 15 to sometimes 30% better thermal efficiency. Further, the design prevents water intrusion. The average trailer in a conventional setting will gain up to 8 pounds a month water weight. The trailer design absorbs water. Picture the rain coming off of the highway. The trailer itself will actually absorb that water up into the sidewalls. And over the life of a trailer, which is 6.5 to 7 years long, the average 6 or 7 year old trailer will actually have 500 to 700 pounds water inside those sidewalls. And you can probably appreciate water is not a good insulative property. It's actually the opposite. The water starts to break the foam down, and what you have is a rapidly deteriorating cooler, if you will. And we've been able to prove now, 5 years of putting trailers on the road, we've been able to prove that our product is not gaining weight, it's sustaining its thermal properties much better than the alternative. And all those things lend itself to a longer asset life. So, time will continue to tell, but we believe our product, when the conventional product may last 6 years or 7 years, we believe we can easily go 7, 8, or 9 years on the asset life. So that's all feeds into a high value proposition to the customer and something only Wabash can provide. And we have I would say, a substantial amount of barriers to entry to keep it ours for some time to come. Picture on the right, you've all surely seen them in the yard, parked ready for delivery. We also, assemble them into complete units for the customer in little fall. So if we think about sustainability, and when I get to this part of the pitch, it's always better to be in the room and see people, but we all come from different spots as it relates to the environment and climate change and sustainability. And I kind of jokingly say, at the end of the day, I don't really care where you stand personally on the topic, but the reality of it is the business is shifting towards a more sustainable offering to their customers. And that can be either because of government regulation, it can be because of social pressures. Even Wall Street has a lot of pressure now for what they call ESG, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance regulation. The SEC is actually trying to push on the public companies. So there's a lot out there right now. So as a business leader, it plays for us to make sure and be prepared, because our customers are the Walmarts and Kroger, Amazons of the world, and FedExes of the world. And they absolutely are starting to call their suppliers, partners, us, and others, asking what we can do to help them become a more say, an environmental friendly or sustainable company. But with that in mind, we're starting to do some math around what if we took every refrigerated trailer that's on the road today operating and replaced them all with an Econex trailer from Lewis. And we just started doing some math. And if you do that math based on the reality that, again, these trailers are using diesel-powered engines to keep the freight temperature controlled, the thermal efficiency we can offer, if we were to snap our fingers to replace every trailer with one of our Econex trailers, we'd save over $2 billion a year in diesel fuel. That's the equivalent of, you see these pictorials on the right. The one I like to talk about is it's the equivalent of taking 800,000 automobiles off of the road on an annual basis. Because again, when you have a much higher thermal efficiency, even if you're using a diesel refrigeration unit, which I believe will be, the main, let's say, refrigeration product of choice for years until electrification really gets embraced from an infrastructure standpoint, when you have 20% more thermal efficiency, that refrigeration unit is running almost 20% less, almost a 1-to-1 ratio. So when you're running the unit 20% less often to keep your freight cool, you're burning less fuel. So right out of the gate, we can show that we're saving carriers and customers a substantial amount of money. And when the diesel engine is not burning, obviously you're not emitting in the atmosphere. So there's a substantial play here. And then not only can I provide our customer cost savings on day one, but they're also lowering their emissions as well. And that's a big value proposition. And one I think we can take advantage of during this era of sustainability. I like to talk about this too because I know everybody sees the semi-trailers out in the plant, out in the lot. I kind of made this slide to talk about what we're launching and what we need to launch. And it's really more than just 53 footers as well. One thing I think a lot of you folks aren't aware of is that in addition to the full semi-trailers that we're producing right there in Little Falls, we're also producing right now this Kroger truck body you see on the left. And the reason you may not see them parked in the yard like that, like you would the trailers, is we're producing these Kroger truck body boxes in a kit form. And then what we do is we build up the kits and we ship the kits out, and we have 5 truck body manufacturing plants spread out all over the country. So what we'll do in Little Falls is we'll build up 5, 6, 7 of these kits and put them in a trailer and we'll ship them to Jonestown, Pennsylvania, to the truck body plant where the Kroger trucks are already sitting. And then the truck body plant will actually assemble that kit into a box and mount it on the chassis itself, which is, eventually Kroger then either comes and picks it up and we ship it to Kroger, using the exact same Econex technology. And this is substantial because the grocery home delivery space is still really in its infancy stage. So we talk to people and tell them where you live, and if you've used grocery delivery before, grocers like Kroger, they're still trying to figure out how to do it in an efficient manner. And what we can all agree with is, getting your ice cream delivered in the back of somebody's Toyota Camry to your driveway is not the way it's going to be in the future. And companies like Kroger are already looking to solve that in a much more efficient way. And for the exact same reasons other trailer customers are seeing it, the technology of Econex is so much better than the next best alternative. We worked very closely with Kroger to jointly develop this product. So it's just another example of how the technology is scaling to a very similar space. And it's something that we're already doing in Little Falls, but you may be less aware of it because you don't see them parked in the yard. And then the need to launch down at the bottom, maybe there's 2 leading candidates of other areas where we've been partnering with customers, other manufacturers for more than a year now. And in the bottom left, you see your typical Ford Transit delivery van, and what we have here is a design where we can take an insulated sleeve, almost like a bathtub surround you would buy at Home Depot, and you slam it into your bathroom. We've actually developed this insulated sleeve that we pieces, and we would insert it into the back of a Ford Transit van. And takes that van from being a sheet metal skeleton van to an insulated van in a very quick install manner. Picture that being your flower deliveries, your beer delivery truck, other various forms. And we have a lot of interest in that. But right now, we simply don't have the capacity to actually manufacture. We continue working on the technology, but it's kind of this dance between not selling too fast because we don't have the capacity installed yet. We can try to drum up the customer interest. Similarly, on the bottom right, as you can see, that's a refrigerated rail car. And you can see the refrigeration unit hanging on the nose of the train car. We've been partnering with a company now for, I would say, at least 2 years, and we've actually built some prototypes. And we've actually built a floor out of Ecomex for these rail cars. Not only is it much more thermally efficient, it's also much lighter than their existing design. Highly interested in the technology, and we're getting to that point where the dance is getting a little more intimate, and they're looking to try to understand what our lead times would be if we were to launch that product. So that'd be an example where we would not be building rail cars per se, but we'd be producing, I think they're 55 or 56 foot long rail car floors in little balls, and then shipping them to the rail car manufacturer, where they would install them as part of their full rail car assembly process. So a lot of interest, and it's certainly growing beyond just the 53-foot temperature. All that clearly gets us to expanding the manufacturing capacity as we've been working now for years, trying to not only optimize the design, but find these other various business opportunities like I just mentioned. So we look at this very simple chart, it talks about how this is translating ultimately into customer demand or orders of our products. And if we go all the way back to 2017, 2017 was all about getting the facility started up and trying to figure out, how we're going to do this, try to convert a boat facility into a trailer manufacturing facility. 18 and 19 was really about our research and development and prototyping still. And that team in Little Falls we have is amazing because they were able to take something as new and emerging as what we were looking for and really help us figure out how we're going to produce this. We changed the design multiple times. We changed how we assembled it multiple times. And the workforce was fantastic to help us actually develop the right ways to do that. But the volumes you see were incredibly low. Those are like equivalent units. So in 2019, we built 200 trains, very, very small. 2020, COVID happened, everything changed. But we're still trying to work on the project itself. Then we come out of COVID in 2021 with full supply chain constraints. So now we have this terrible environment where we had demand growing in 21, but we had no parts and no materials to actually manufacture equipment during 2021. And the main constraint we had, and we still are suffering from it, is foam shortages that date all the way back to February 2021 winter storm in Texas. So not this past February, but a year and a half ago now, when Texas got hit with that winter storm, it shut down Dow and BSF down in the Gulf region, and they still to this day are putting most of their customers on allocation, which means we can't buy as much foam as we want until they continue getting caught up. We worked through that, and we continue to get better, but we still are constrained. But you can see now in 2022, our demand is through the roof, so to speak, compared to prior years. And the year after that, or next year, 2023, we're very confident we can sell nearly 4,000 trains. So that's really what we're faced with. I feel like the technology's been proven. We have a lot of work to do. But having said that, we need to decide how best to scale the capacity up, both in terms of equipment and employee base. What I was mentioning, this is what I brought to you all in the spring timeframe. I think I was up there pitching this plan in April, which is right at the top right. You see it's called the April 2022 plan, which I think subsequently then you reviewed and voted on in May. It was really about us ramping the facility in Little Falls up. You see at the top it says Wabash is targeting additional 144 new hires and investing an additional $18 million. And that's what drove the initial conversation about extending some of our incentives for another 5 years, kind of in exchange for this additional investment. And then as Carol knows, I needed this kind of, let's say, commitment from you because I was going to my board meeting in May, mid-May, to really pitch this plan to them. And that conversation was a very positive one, to the point to where after some dialogue with the board, they were asking me, well, what happens after this? And, you know, so we got to understand if we want to continue trying to invest further in Little Falls and expand it, you know, additionally, or if we want to look for a new location, a new zip code, as I call it. And with all the pent-up demand, and let's say with the track record, the positive track record we've had with the community of Little Falls, the board kind of asked me to come back and think about how aggressively we can pursue, you know, what's the most we think we can get out of Little Falls in terms of people, investment, and ultimately how much capacity can we create. So we went back to the drawing board quickly and came up with the following plan, which I think is what the latest numbers are now, which the next slide I'm showing you, which looks very similar, but if you look in the top right now, it says the June 2022 plan. And this is what I shared back with the team when I visited Little Falls last month. And this is what we kind of call our all-in plan in Little Falls. And we think we can ramp up the workforce to 300 hourly people, or additional 216, and invest an additional $23 million. We think we can get the capacity of that facility up to 3,000 semi-trailers a year, as well as I think about 2,000 truck bodies a year, like that Kroger that I showed you. So 5,000 total pieces of equipment, in addition to some level of ancillary other manufacturing, like whether it be the rail car floors I showed you, or those Ford Transit inserts. So this is a plan the team has been now circulating in terms of how much more investment, how much equipment can we get in that facility, do we need to pour additional concrete or not, and ultimately can we get a workforce installed in Little Falls of, you know, over 300 people by the end of next year. And if we do all those things, we believe we can generate the capacity that we're seeking to generate. So this was the add-on when we came back to Carol and a lot of you on this today. The board meeting actually went quite well, so well, they asked me to come back with a more aggressive plan. And so this is our most aggressive plan that we'd like to pursue. And that's why we came back and we're requesting if we can have the incentives extended for a total of 10 years off of the original in exchange for seeking this type of expansion in the community. That's my last slide. So welcome any types of questions or concerns or comments you may have.
Any questions or comments for Dustin?
Comment would be, I'm very excited to see what you're planning. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Carol?
You flip that switch, there you go.
You know, I remember when we got word that Larson was going to close, and you know, Wabash is a community's prayer after a major layoff like that. For them to come in here and utilize the plant, and they came because of the employees too. They found the value there because they knew that they had experience with composites. So I just want to thank Dustin for his many trips coming here, and for Wabash itself for making a commitment to our community here. We wondered what was going to happen after Larson closed, and along came Wabash, and we're on a run again. So thank you, Dustin, and your board for coming here.
My pleasure. You made me remember, I've been lucky enough to be on this project since day one. Had many different job titles, but it doesn't matter. It's been on basically the same project. And I remember pitching back in 2017 this whole notion of acquiring the facility to the board. And as you'd expect, they often ask very simple questions, but they're highly insightful. And the simplest question I got was, why do you want to be in north central Minnesota or something like this, of all the places in the country, why there? And at that first point in time, I said two reasons, the workforce and the equipment. And that was because based on a couple of visits, strikingly similar between how Larson was producing some of their boats, not all of them, but some of their boats, and how we thought we could produce semi-trailers. And, again, if you're humble about it, you have no idea what you don't really know when you're first getting into it. And now that we fast forward 5 more years, a lot of the equipment we've actually walked away from almost entirely. We've changed a lot of the manufacturing processes. The deck cells that you may be familiar with, we started off using, and now instead of compression mold, we vacuum it. So my point is we've stepped away so much from the equipment itself that we thought would be so critical to our success. But why are we still here wanting to invest another $27 million? It's the workforce that I told Carol and others. You can't replicate the workforce. You just can't. And if you tried, it would take such a very, very long period of time. So that's what's keeping us in Little Falls, is the workforce and the potential, which is why when I was up there a few weeks ago talking to some of you, someone asked me, what's the biggest thing that I need help on? And it's not the equipment. I think we have some pretty smart engineers that can figure out the equipment side. It's going to be, how can I take that group of 100 employees that are so critical to our success? How do we turn that into 300 of the right people that can keep that culture, that culture, that work ethic, and alive? Because that's what's keeping us there. Is a great workforce. So yeah, we're very happy and lucky to have.
Thank you, Dustin. John, are we having 2 separate public hearings?
The public hearing, I think, can be the same, but the resolutions are 2 separate resolutions, so you'd have to vote on those separately.
Okay. So you want me to call the public hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, I will call for the public hearing, which is her West, so I'm kind of a rookie at this. Anybody like to speak? Anybody like to speak? Last time, anybody like to speak? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. First up, we have the EDA Resolution 2022 EDA 3 Business Subsidy Grant Agreement and Levy a tax for the EDA. I would entertain a motion for approval of this resolution. So moved. Motion by Jeremy. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by, who's the second on it?
Brad.
Second by Brad. Any questions or comments?
So what's the stipulation going to be on this? Is there job creation that's tied into this, or it's just?
So they additionally have a MIF application in the works, and we would tie the job growth with their MIF application, and then it's ownership of the facility for the full-length term to 2037.
And this is going to stay the same, they pay their taxes, we just give it back to them?
We pay their taxes and rebate it.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
It's a resolution.
Well, yeah, resolution.
Hamfler,
Yes.
Reinitz,
Yes.
Zilka,
Yes.
Kirby,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes. Motion carries. Next up, we have resolution RDFA Business Subsidy Grant Agreement Rural Development Finance Authority. Any questions or comments? Or
Believe so.
entertain a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve of the resolution.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further questions or comments? If not, call the roll, please.
Blaine,
Yes.
Zilka,
Yes?
Kirby,
Yes.
Hurkak.
Yes. Motion carries. All right, well, thanks, everybody. We got people ready to kick the door down. So, Dustin, thanks for everything, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. I'll be up there next week.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
All
Good
right.
night.
These two meetings are adjourned.
What do you have next?
Council?
Very excited.